Queen Vexera sat on her crystal throne, high above the war room floor. The throne was made from the core of a dead star, and it glowed with soft blue light. Around her, dozens of her officers stood at attention. Each one was tall and gray, with 4 arms and large black eyes. Their heads had crowns of light that pulsed when they thought to each other. The Zephyrian Empire had been at war for 3 years now. World after world had fallen to their fleets. The Queen's telepathic warriors could read minds and see the future. Their weapons could tear holes in space itself. No species had been able to stop them. General Kithara stepped forward. She was the Queen's best officer, with scars across her face from 100 battles. "Your Majesty, we have good news from all fronts. The Altarian system surrendered yesterday. The Centauri colonies are asking for peace talks." The Queen nodded. Her mind touched the thoughts of every officer in the room at once. This was normal for her people. They shared thoughts like humans shared words. But today something felt different. There was a weight in her chest that she could not explain. "What about the outer systems?" she asked. "Almost finished, Your Majesty. The humans put up more fight than we expected, but their fleets are broken. Most of their worlds are under our control now." Kithara brought up a hologram of the galaxy. Red dots showed Zephyrian territory. It covered most of the map now. The Queen studied the display. Each red dot was a world with billions of people. Some had fought. Some had surrendered. All of them now served the Empire. This was the way of war. The strong survived. The weak served. "There is one small problem," Kithara continued, "in the Sol system where the humans come from. Most of their fleet is destroyed, but there is one pilot who keeps causing trouble. Our hunting squads cannot catch him. The humans call him Ghost 7. The name hit the Queen like a physical blow. Her 4 arms froze. The light in her crown went dark. For the first time in her life, her mind went completely silent. This should not have been possible. Her people were always connected to each other through thought. Even when they slept, their minds touched. But now Queen Vexara's thoughts vanished like a candle blown out by wind. The officers looked at each other in confusion. General Kithara stepped closer to the throne. "Your Majesty, are you well?" The Queen could not answer. The name Ghost 7 echoed in her mind like thunder, but it was not the name that shocked her. It was the memory that came with it. A memory she had buried so deep that she thought it was gone forever. She remembered a young human with kind eyes. She remembered his gentle hands fixing her broken ship. She remembered the way he smiled when he showed her human art. Most of all, she remembered the feeling of being cared for by someone who asked for nothing in return. "Your Majesty." Kithara's voice seemed to come from very far away. The Queen forced herself to breathe. Slowly, the light returned to her crown. Her mind reconnected to the network of thoughts around her. But she kept her deepest thoughts locked away where no one could see them. "I am fine," she said. Her voice was steady, but inside she felt like she was falling. "Tell me more about this Ghost 7. Kithara pulled up new data on the hologram. "He flies alone in an old human fighter ship. Our sensors can barely track him. He hides in asteroid fields and attacks our supply lines. He has destroyed 17 of our ships in the last month." 17 ships? The Queen's voice was sharp. "How is one human pilot doing this?" "We don't know, Your Majesty. Our best pilots have tried to catch him. He seems to know exactly where they will be before they get there. Some of our officers think he has psychic powers like us." The Queen studied the tactical display. The humans' flight patterns were shown as green lines weaving through the asteroid belt around the human homeworld. The lines looked random, but she could see the intelligence behind them. This pilot was not just lucky. He was brilliant. "What do we know about him?" "Very little, Your Majesty. Human communications are encrypted, and they change their codes daily. We know he was part of something called the Guardian Squadron before the war. Most of his unit was destroyed in the first battle for Earth. He is probably the last one left alive." The Queen's hands gripped the arms of her throne. The crystal was warm under her fingers, but she felt cold inside. Could it really be him? Could the gentle engineer who had saved her life have become this Ghost 7? It had been 5 years since she crash-landed on the human colony world. 5 years since Marcus Chen had pulled her from the wreckage of her scout ship. She had been a princess then, leading a science mission to study strange energy readings near Earth. The solar storm that damaged her ship had seemed like bad luck at the time. Now she wondered if it had been fate. Marcus had not known who she was. To him, she was just another being in need of help. He had taken her to his workshop and spent weeks fixing her ship. During that time, he had shown her things about humans that no intelligence report could capture. He had shown her human music, which made no logical sense but somehow moved her heart. He had shared human food with her, even though his people were rationing supplies. He had talked to her about his dreams of exploring the stars in peace, not war. Most importantly, he had treated her like a person, not a princess or an alien or an enemy. For the first time in her life, she had felt what it was like to be valued for who she was, not what she could do for others. When her rescue fleet finally found her, she had not wanted to leave, but duty called. Her father was dying and the Empire needed her. She had hidden her feelings and returned to her role as a leader. After her father's death, the military council had pushed for expansion. They said other species were getting too strong. They said the Zephyrians needed more resources to survive. They said war was the only way to secure their future. She had agreed because she thought it was logical. She had buried her memories of kindness and focused on being a strong leader. She had told herself that conquest was necessary. That mercy was weakness. But now, sitting on her throne of crystal and starlight, she wondered if she had been wrong. Your Majesty, General Cathara was waiting for orders. The Queen straightened in her throne. Around her, 40 officers waited for her command. Beyond them, millions of soldiers waited across the galaxy. The Empire was her responsibility. She could not let personal feelings change that. Double the hunter squadrons in the Sol system, she ordered. I want this Ghost 7 captured alive. Alive, Your Majesty? Yes, I want to interrogate him personally. The Queen's voice was firm, but inside she was shaking. If he is as skilled as you say, we need to learn his secrets. General Cathara bowed. It will be done, Your Majesty. As the officers filed out of the throne room, Queen Vexara sat alone with her thoughts. The crystal throne hummed with power around her, but she felt smaller than she had in years. Somewhere in the asteroid fields of the Sol system, a human pilot was flying alone against impossible odds. If it was really Marcus, then the gentleman who had shown her kindness was now her enemy. The man who had taught her about hope was fighting against everything she had built. The irony was almost too much to bear. She had conquered the galaxy in the name of protecting her people, but in doing so, she might have destroyed the one person who had shown her what peace could look like. The Queen closed her eyes and reached out with her mind, searching the vast network of thoughts that connected her empire. Somewhere out there, Ghost 7 was planning his next move. Soon she would know if her suspicions were correct. Soon she would face the choice between the leader she had become and the person she used to be. 5 years earlier, Princess Vexara had been a very different person. She was young for her species, only 200 years old, and she loved learning about the universe. While other young Zephyrians trained for war or politics, she studied stars and planets and the strange energy patterns that danced between them. Her father, King Theron, had given her command of a small science ship called the Star Whisper. It was not a warship, just a research vessel with advanced sensors and a crew of 20 scientists. Their mission was to investigate unusual quantum readings coming from a star system the humans called Sol. These energy patterns are unlike anything we have seen before, her chief scientist, Dr. Ilara, had said as they approached the outer edge of the system. They seemed to be artificial, but no known technology could create them. Princess Vexara had been excited. This could be her chance to make a real discovery, something that would prove she was more than just her father's daughter. She had pushed the ship deeper into the system, following the energy trail toward the third planet from the sun. That was when the solar storm hit. The human star was more active than their sensors had predicted. A massive flare erupted from its surface, sending waves of radiation and electromagnetic energy across the entire system. The Star Whisper's shields held for a few minutes, but then began to fail. "Princess, we need to retreat," Dr. Ilara had shouted over the alarms, but it was too late. The storm overwhelmed their systems. The ship's engines died. Life support began to fail. They were falling toward a small world on the edge of the system, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. Princess Vexara remembered the crash. The ship had hit the ground hard, skidding across a field of tall grass before slamming into a forest. When she woke up, half her crew was dead and the other half was badly injured. The ship was broken beyond repair. She had crawled out of the wreckage expecting to die on an alien world. Instead, she found humans waiting for her. The first one she saw was a young man with brown hair and gentle eyes. He was kneeling beside Dr. Ilara, checking her wounds with careful hands. When he saw the princess moving, he smiled. "Take it easy," he said in his strange human language. "You're hurt pretty bad." The princess did not understand his words, but she understood his tone. He was trying to help. This surprised her. Everything she had been taught about aliens said they would be hostile or afraid. But this human seemed only concerned. His name was Marcus Chen, and he was an engineer for the human colony of Haven's Rest. The colony was small, only about 5,000 people, and they lived simple lives farming and mining on the edge of human space. When their sensors detected the crash, Marcus had led a rescue team to help. Why? The princess asked him later, when their universal translator was working again. Why help us? We are strangers to you. Marcus had been fixing a broken circuit in her ship's medical bay. He looked up from his work and gave her that gentle smile again. Because you needed help, he said simply. That's what people do. This answer confused her. On her homeworld, help always came with a price. Allies expected favors, enemies expected nothing. But humans, it seemed, were different. Marcus spent the next month working to repair the Star Whisper. It was impossible, really. The ship's core was cracked, and they did not have the right materials. But Marcus refused to give up. He worked 18 hours a day, pulling parts from the colony's equipment to build what they needed. During that time, the princess learned about human culture. Marcus showed her their art, which was wild and emotional in ways that Zephyrian art was not. He played her their music, which made no logical sense but somehow spoke to her heart. He shared their food with her. Even though the colony was short on supplies, most importantly, he talked to her. Not as a princess or a potential ally, but as a person. He told her about his dreams of exploring space, of finding new worlds where different species could live together in peace. He spoke of a future where war was not necessary, where understanding could replace conquest. "Don't you want to be strong?" she asked him one evening as they worked on the ship together. "Strength isn't about being able to hurt others," Marcus said. He was calibrating a power coupling, his hands steady and sure. "Real strength is about protecting what you care about. It's about building something better than what came before." The princess had never heard anyone talk like this. In her world, strength meant power over others. It meant the ability to take what you needed and defend what you had. But Marcus spoke of strength as something that lifted others up instead of pushing them down. As the days passed, she found herself changing. The cold logic that her people prized began to warm. She started to understand emotions that her species had long forgotten. She felt joy when Marcus smiled. She felt peace when they worked together in comfortable silence. She felt something she had never experienced before. Love. Not romantic love exactly, though there was something of that too. It was deeper and broader than that. It was love for this strange, kind human who had shown her a different way to be. It was love for his people, who had welcomed her without question. It was love for the idea that the universe could be a place of cooperation instead of competition. The night before her rescue fleet arrived, Marcus gave her a gift. It was a small compass made of brass and glass with a needle that always pointed toward Earth. "So you can always find your way home," he said. She wanted to tell him that home was no longer her planet. Home was here with him in this small colony where kindness was more important than power. But she could not say the words. She was a princess and her people needed her. When the Zephyrian fleet arrived, she had to put on her royal mask again. She thanked the colonists formally and left with her escorts. But she kept the compass hidden in her robes, and she carried the memory of Marcus's kindness in her heart. The flight home was long and difficult. Dr. Ilara and the other survivors were weak and needed constant medical care. But the princess found herself thinking not about their injuries, but about what she had learned on Haven's Rest. When they finally reached the Zephyrian homeworld, her father was waiting. King Theron was old and sick, and the weight of ruling was wearing him down. The military council had been pushing for expansion, saying that other species were becoming too powerful. They wanted to strike first before their enemies could organize. "We cannot wait any longer," General Cathera had said at the first council meeting after the princess's return. "The humans are building new ships. The Altarians are forming alliances. If we do not act soon, we will be surrounded." The princess had tried to speak up, to tell them about the kindness she had seen. But her father silenced her with a gesture. "You have been away too long, daughter," he said. You have forgotten what it means to be Zephyrian. We survive because we are strong. We rule because we must. Sentiment is a luxury we cannot afford. 3 months later, King Theron died. The princess became Queen Vexara, and the weight of an empire fell on her shoulders. The military council pressed her harder, showing her intelligence reports about human fleet movements and alien alliances. They painted a picture of threats closing in from every direction. We have no choice, Your Majesty, General Kythera insisted. Strike now, or be destroyed later. Queen Vexara had stared at the tactical displays, seeing the galaxy spread out before her like a game board. Each species was a potential threat or a potential conquest. Logic said that the general was right. Logic said that war was the only way to ensure survival. But in her private chambers, she took out the brass compass that Marcus had given her. It still pointed toward Earth even though she was hundreds of light years away. She remembered his words about strength being the ability to protect and build, not destroy. For a moment, she had wavered. Maybe there was another way. Maybe she could find a path to peace. Then the reports came in about human ships massing near the border, about Altarian ambassadors meeting in secret, about new weapons being tested in distant systems. The threat seemed real and immediate. Fear won over hope. The Queen authorized the first strikes. The war began with overwhelming force. Zephyrian fleet struck a dozen worlds simultaneously, using their telepathic abilities to coordinate perfectly. Most species surrendered quickly, awed by the power they faced. But the humans fought back. They fought harder than anyone expected, showing a stubbornness and creativity that surprised even the Queen's best generals. World after world became a battlefield. Haven's Rest was one of the first colonies to fall. The Queen had told herself it was necessary, just another strategic target. But she had made sure the attack was quick and clean. She told herself she was being merciful. She never learned that Marcus Chen had been off-world when the attack came, serving as a pilot instructor for the human fleet. She never knew that he had rushed back to find his home in ashes and his people dead. She never knew that her act of mercy had created her greatest enemy. For 3 years, she had buried the memory of her time on Haven's Rest. She had focused on being a strong leader, making the hard choices that war demanded. She had told herself that kindness was weakness, that sentiment was dangerous. But now, sitting in her crystal throne room, the memory burned bright again. The name Ghost 7 had unlocked everything she had tried to forget. The gentle engineer who had shown her a different way to live was now fighting against everything she had built. The irony was almost too much to Marcus. Chen's fighter ship drifted silently between 2 massive asteroids, its engines cold and dark. The cockpit was cramped and worn, patched with spare parts from a dozen different ships. Warning lights blinked on the console, showing system failures that he could not fix. But the ship still flew, and that was all that mattered. Ghost 7, this is Haven Base, a voice crackled over the radio. Do you copy? Marcus pressed a button on his worn flight stick. I copy, Haven Base, status report. We've got 37 Zephyrian ships moving through Sector 7. Looks like another supply convoy. Are you in position to intercept? Marcus checked his navigation display. Sector 7 was 2 hours away at full speed. His ship was low on fuel and he had not slept in 36 hours. But the convoy would be carrying food and medical supplies to the Zephyrian occupation forces on Mars. If it got through, more human prisoners would suffer. I'm on my way, he said. The ship's AI spoke up in a calm female voice. Marcus, your stress levels are dangerously high. You need rest. I'll rest when this is over, Arya, he replied, firing up the engines. Arya was not just a computer program. She was built from the brain scans of his dead squadron mates, their memories and personalities preserved in quantum storage. When the Guardian Squadron had been destroyed in the first battle for Earth, Marcus had salvaged what he could. Now his friends lived on as voices in his ship's computer, helping him fight a war he could not win. This is crazy, Marcus, said another voice. This one belonged to Lieutenant Sarah Kim, his former wingmate. 37 ships? Even you can't handle those odds. Watch me, Marcus said, pushing the throttle forward. His ship accelerated out of the asteroid field, heading toward the convoy. The stars streaked past the cockpit window, but Marcus barely noticed them anymore. He had seen too much death, lost too many friends. The beauty of space had faded for him long ago. 3 years earlier, he had been a different person. He had been an engineer on Haven's Rest, dreaming of exploration and peaceful contact with alien species. The war had changed all that. Now he was Ghost 7, the last surviving member of the Guardian Squadron, fighting a one-man war against an empire of billions. The change had started when he returned from his teaching assignment to find Haven's Rest in ruins. The Zephyrian attack had been swift and thorough. Every building was destroyed. Every person was dead. The colony that had been his home for 15 years was nothing but ash and melted metal. He had walked through the wreckage for hours, looking for survivors. He found none. The workshop where he had spent so many happy years was gone. The school where he had taught young engineers was a crater. The park where children had played was a field of glass, but the worst part was finding his personal quarters destroyed. The small room where he had kept his most precious possession, a photo of the alien princess he had once helped. She had been so different from what he expected. Kind and curious, interested in human culture and dreams of peace. The photo was gone, burned to nothing along with everything else he had cared about. But he still remembered her face. He remembered the way she had smiled when he showed her human music. He remembered how she had listened when he talked about his dreams of exploring the stars together. He had tried to find her after the war started. Intelligence reports said the Zephyrian Empire was led by a queen, but no one knew what she looked like. The Zephyrians kept their royal family hidden from public view. Marcus had hoped that maybe somehow he could reach out to her. Maybe the princess who had understood human kindness could help stop the killing. But as the war dragged on, that hope had faded. The Zephyrian attacks were too ruthless, too complete. Whoever was leading them showed no mercy for civilians. This was not the work of someone who valued peace. Now Marcus fought because it was all he had left. His home was gone. His friends were dead. His dreams of peaceful exploration had died with them. All that remained was the need to make the Zephyrians pay for what they had taken. Convoy in sight, Aria announced. 37 ships just as reported. They have a heavy escort. Marcus studied the tactical display. The convoy was spread out in a standard Zephyrian formation, with cargo ships in the center and warships around the edges. It looked impossible to attack, but Marcus had learned to find weaknesses in impossible situations. There, he said, pointing at a gap in the formation. The third cargo ship is lagging behind. If I can get close enough, that's suicide, Sarah's voice protested. You'll never make it out alive. Maybe not, Marcus admitted. But I'll take some of them with me. He had grown used to the idea of dying. Every mission brought him closer to the end, and he knew it could not last forever. But he was not ready to give up yet. As long as his ship could fly, he would keep fighting. The attack run began at maximum speed. Marcus dove toward the convoy from above, using the glare of the local star to hide his approach. The Zephyrian sensors would detect him eventually, but maybe not until it was too late. Incoming fighter, a Zephyrian voice crackled over the radio. All units converge on target. The escort ships turned toward him, their weapons charging. Marcus rolled his ship hard to the right, dodging a stream of energy bolts. His shields flared but held. First cargo ship in range, Aria announced. Marcus fired his remaining missiles at the lagging freighter. They struck the hull and exploded, tearing holes in the ship's side. Atmosphere vented into space as the cargo hold decompressed. Direct hit, reported Lieutenant Chen's voice. Marcus had programmed the AI with his own memories too, and sometimes it felt like talking to himself from the past. Medical supplies destroyed. That was one less shipment reaching the occupation forces. Marcus turned toward the next target, but the escorts were closing in fast. Energy bolts flashed past his cockpit as he weaved between them. Marcus, you need to get out of there, Sarah urged. Now! But Marcus was not ready to run yet. He spotted another opportunity. 2 cargo ships flying close together, their hulls almost touching. If he could thread the needle between them, he dove toward the gap, pushing his ship to its limits. The Zephyrian escorts followed, firing continuously. One bolt grazed his port wing, sending sparks across the cockpit. Hull breach in Section 4. Aria reported calmly. Sealing emergency hatches. Marcus reached the gap between the cargo ships and fired everything he had. His energy cannons tore into both hulls simultaneously, crippling them both, but the victory came at a cost. His ship was badly damaged and more escorts were converging on his position. That's enough, he muttered, banking hard toward the asteroid field. Time to go. The pursuit lasted for 2 hours. Marcus used every trick he had learned in 3 years of guerrilla warfare. hiding behind asteroids and using sensor shadows to break contact. When he finally reached safety, his ship was barely flyable. "Not bad for a day's work," said the voice of Commander Torres, his old squadron leader. "2 cargo ships down, minimal damage to us." "Minimal?" Marcus laughed bitterly. "Aria, what's our status?" "Port engine is offline. Shield generators are operating at 40% capacity. We have fuel for maybe 3 more missions like this one." Marcus nodded. It was what he had expected. Every battle brought him closer to the end, but he would keep fighting until his ship fell apart around him. He guided the damaged fighter toward Haven Base, a hidden asteroid facility where the last human resistance fighters gathered. It was not much. A few dozen ships, a couple hundred people, and supplies that would not last another month. But it was home now. As he flew through the asteroid field, Marcus thought about the princess he had once known. Sometimes he wondered what had happened to her. Had she survived the war? Did she ever think about her time on Haven's Rest? Did she remember the human who had shown her kindness? He hoped she was safe wherever she was. Despite everything that had happened, he could not bring himself to hate her. She had been innocent then, curious about human culture and dreams of peace. The war was not her fault if only he could find her again. If only he could make her understand what her people had done to his. Maybe together they could find a way to end the killing. But that was a foolish dream. Princesses did not get involved in wars, and engineers did not change the fate of empires. Marcus was just one man with one broken ship, fighting against impossible odds. Still, he kept her memory alive in his heart. In the darkest moments of the war, when death seemed certain and hope seemed lost, he remembered her smile. He remembered the way she had listened to his dreams of peace. He remembered the compass he had given her, always pointing toward home. Maybe someday, when the war was over, he would find his way home too. Maybe someday there would be peace again, but until then he would keep flying. He would keep fighting. He was Ghost 7, the phantom of the asteroid fields, and he would not give up. "Haven Base, this is Ghost 7, he called as the hidden facility came into view. "Requesting permission to land." "Permission granted, Ghost. Welcome home." Marcus guided his ship into the docking bay, already planning his next mission. Somewhere out there, the Zephyrian Empire was preparing more attacks on human worlds. Somewhere out there, people were suffering under alien occupation. And somewhere out there, a princess he had once. The trap was perfect. Too perfect. Marcus should have seen it coming, but exhaustion had made him careless. When the intelligence report came in about a lone Zephyrian command ship near Jupiter, carrying vital data about the Queen's location, it seemed like the chance he had been waiting for, a way to strike at the heart of the Empire. Now, as Zephyrian fighters surrounded his ship on all sides, he realized he had been played. "Ghost 7, you are surrounded," came a voice over the radio. "Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded." Marcus looked at his tactical display. 12 fighters had appeared from behind Jupiter's moons, cutting off every escape route. His damaged ship could not outrun them, and he was too far from the asteroid fields to hide. "Marcus, we need to fight our way out," Sarah's voice urged through the ship's AI. "With what?" Marcus replied grimly. "We're down to emergency power and half our weapons are offline." He had been flying for 18 hours straight, hitting Zephyrian supply lines across the outer system. His ship was running on fumes, held together with spare parts and determination. This was not how he had wanted it to end, but maybe it was fitting. A warrior's death was better than slowly wasting away in the asteroid fields. "All weapons fire at will," he ordered. The battle was brief and hopeless. Marcus managed to damage 2 enemy fighters before his shields failed completely. Energy bolts tore through his hull, knocking out life support and main power. When the Zephyrian boarding pods attached to his ship, he could barely move. The enemy soldiers who came through his airlock were tall and gray, with forearms and weapons that hummed with deadly energy. They moved with mechanical precision, securing his ship in minutes. "Target acquired," their leader reported. "The human is alive but injured." Marcus tried to resist as they dragged him from his cockpit, but his body would not obey. 3 years of constant fighting had taken their toll. He was 35 years old but felt like an ancient man. As they pulled him toward their transport ship, he heard Aria's voice one last time. "Marcus, I'm sorry. We tried our best." "You did good, Aria," he whispered. "Tell the others I'll see them soon." The Zephyrian command ship was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. The corridors were made of crystal that glowed with soft light, and the walls seemed to pulse with living energy. Everything was beautiful and alien and completely wrong. They brought him to a holding cell that was more like a hotel room than a prison. The bed was comfortable, the air was clean, and there was even a window showing the rings of Saturn. It was the kind of luxury he had not experienced since before the war. A guard brought him food and medical attention for his injuries. This surprised him. Zephyrian prisoners usually got the minimum necessary to keep them alive. But these soldiers treated him almost with respect, as if he were an important captive. Hours passed. Marcus tried to plan an escape, but the cell was perfectly secure. The walls were too strong to break, and the guards outside were always alert. He was trapped, waiting for whatever the Zephyrians had planned for him. Finally, they came for him. 6 guards in ceremonial armor escorted him through the ship's corridors toward what looked like a throne room. The chamber was huge, with crystal walls that reached up toward a domed ceiling. At the far end sat a figure on a throne that glowed like a captured star. Queen Vexara was exactly what Marcus had expected from a galactic conqueror. She was tall and imposing, with 4 arms and a crown of light that pulsed with telepathic energy. Her face was cold and regal, showing no emotion as he was brought before her. Around the throne stood dozens of officers and advisors, all watching him with the same cold curiosity. This was the heart of the Zephyrian Empire, the center of power that had destroyed so many worlds. "So," the Queen said in perfect English, "you are the famous Ghost 7. You have caused my empire considerable trouble." Marcus said nothing. He had expected to be interrogated, probably tortured for information about human resistance activities. He was prepared for that, but something about this felt different. There was tension in the room that he did not understand. "Remove his helmet," the Queen ordered. 2 guards stepped forward and lifted the battered flight helmet from Marcus's head. His brown hair was streaked with gray now, and his face was marked with scars from a dozen battles. 3 years of war had changed him from the young engineer he used to be, but his eyes were the same. Kind and gentle even after everything he had seen. The moment the helmet came off, the Queen's entire body went rigid. Her forearms froze in place. The light in her crown flickered and dimmed. For several seconds, she stared at him in complete silence. Marcus looked back at her, confused by her reaction. There was something familiar about her face, something that tugged at memories he thought he had buried. But it was impossible. The alien princess he had known was dead or lost somewhere in the galaxy. This was the ruthless queen who had destroyed his world. Then she spoke again, and her voice was different, softer, almost frightened. "Marcus." The name hit him like a physical blow. No one in the Zephyrian Empire should know his real name. The Resistance only knew him as Ghost 7. His identity had been a secret for 3 years. Unless... He looked at her face again, really looked this time. Beneath the crown and the royal makeup, beneath the cold mask of command, he saw features he remembered. The same large eyes, the same graceful neck, the same way of tilting her head when she was thinking. "Vexara," he whispered. The Queen's officers looked at each other in confusion. Their supreme leader was staring at a human prisoner as if she had seen a ghost. Some reached for their weapons, sensing that something was terribly wrong, but Queen Vexara barely noticed them. Her mind was reeling with the impossibility of what she was seeing. The gentle engineer who had saved her life 5 years ago was standing before her, but he was changed beyond recognition. The kind young man she remembered was now a scarred warrior, his eyes hard with the weight of terrible loss. "It is you," she said, her voice barely audible. "But you look different." Marcus finished bitterly. "Yeah, war does that to people." The Queen stood up from her throne, moving slowly as if in a dream. Her officers watched nervously as she descended the steps toward the prisoner. This was not how interrogations were supposed to go. "I thought you were dead," she said when she reached him. "Haven's Rest was..." "The colony was destroyed," Marcus said flatly, "along with everyone I cared about. Your people did a very thorough job." The words hit her like slaps across the face. She had ordered the attack on Haven's Rest herself, thinking it was just another strategic target. She had never imagined that Marcus might be there. She had never imagined the consequences of her choices. "I didn't know," she said desperately. "I thought you were safe." You thought what?" Marcus's voice was rising now. 3 years of rage finally finding a target. That your little visit to my world meant nothing? That the kindness we showed you was just a joke? The Queen's guard stepped forward, hands on their weapons. No one spoke to their leader that way, but Vexara waved them back with a gesture. "You don't understand," she said. "I never wanted this war. I was forced into it. My advisors said we had no choice." Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. "No choice? You could have chosen peace. You could have chosen to remember what I taught you about humanity." "I did remember." The Queen's composure finally cracked. "I remembered every day, but I had responsibilities. My people were in danger. Other species were building weapons, forming alliances. If you didn't strike first, you might have had to try diplomacy instead of murder." The words hung in the air between them like a blade. Around the throne room, Zephyrian officers watched in stunned silence as their invincible queen argued with a human prisoner. Some were reaching for communicators ready to call for backup. General Cathera stepped forward, her hand on her weapon. "Your Majesty, this human is clearly using some kind of psychological warfare. We should execute him immediately." "No," the Queen said sharply. "Leave us. All of you." "Your Majesty, that would be most unwise." "I said leave us." The Queen's voice echoed with telepathic force, making every Zephyrian in the room stagger. "Now!" Reluctantly, the officers filed out of the throne room. General Kithra was the last to go, giving Marcus a look that promised death if he tried anything. When the doors closed, the Queen and the human pilot were alone. For a long moment, neither spoke. They stood facing each other across a gap that seemed wider than the space between stars. Marcus saw the alien conqueror who had destroyed his life. Vexara saw the human whose kindness had once shown her a different way to live. Finally, Marcus reached into his flight suit and pulled out a small object. It was the brass compass he had given her 5 years ago, tarnished now and dented from battle. "You left this behind," he said quietly. The Queen stared at the compass in shock. "How do you have that?" "I kept it with me always. I found it in the wreckage of Haven's Rest. Someone must have dropped it during the attack." Marcus's voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. "I guess one of your soldiers thought it was valuable enough to steal from the dead." Vexara felt like she was drowning. The compass had been her most precious possession, the one thing that connected her to the happiest time of her life. She had worn it hidden beneath her royal robes every day since becoming queen. The Queen's private chambers were nothing like Marcus had expected. Instead of grand displays of power, the room was simple and quiet. Soft light came from crystals embedded in the walls, and a large window showed the stars beyond. It felt more like a scholar's study than the room of a galactic conqueror. Vexara sat across from him at a small table, the brass compass between them. She had removed her crown, and without its intimidating glow she looked younger, almost like the curious princess he had once known. "Tell me about Haven's Rest," she said quietly. "After I left, what was it like?" Marcus was silent for a long moment. He had not talked about his home in 3 years, not to anyone. The memories were too painful, but something in her voice made him want to answer. "It was peaceful," he said finally. "We were building something new there, a place where different species could work together. After you left, I started teaching classes about alien cultures. Kids would come to learn about Zephyrian art and music." Vexara winced. "Children learned about my people?" "Your art mostly. The mathematical patterns in your music. The way your buildings follow quantum harmonics." Marcus's voice grew softer. "I told them about a princess I met once who was curious about human culture. I said maybe someday we could visit each other's worlds as friends." The Queen closed her eyes. The idea of human children learning about her people, dreaming of friendship between the stars, made her chest ache with grief. "I ruined that," she whispered. "We both did," Marcus said. "You by choosing war. Me by not fighting hard enough for peace. You were one person. I was a queen. The responsibility was mine." Marcus picked up the compass and turned it over in his hands. The brass was worn smooth from years of handling, first by him, then by her. "Why did you keep this?" "Because it reminded me of you, of the person I was when I was with you." Vexara looked out at the stars. "For 5 years I told myself I was protecting my people. That conquest was the only way to keep them safe. But every night I looked at that compass and remembered what you said about building instead of destroying. Then why didn't you stop?" "Because I was afraid." The admission came out like a confession. "My father died, and suddenly I was responsible for billions of lives. My generals showed me intelligence reports about alien fleets, about weapons being built to destroy us. They said if we didn't strike first, we would all die. Marcus leaned forward. So you believed them? I wanted to believe them. It was easier than admitting I was wrong. Vexara met his eyes. I convinced myself that the war was necessary, that the deaths were justified, but every time I ordered another attack, I felt a piece of myself die. And now I've seen what my choices created. I've seen what they did to you. The Queen's voice broke slightly. The gentleman who taught me about kindness has become a warrior. The engineer who dreamed of exploring the stars together is fighting alone in the dark. Marcus was quiet for a moment. I'm not the same person you knew. The war changed me, made me harder. But you're still Marcus, Vexara said. You could have killed me when we were alone in the throne room. Your people would have called you a hero. But you didn't, would you have? 3 years ago? Yes, today? She touched the compass gently. I don't know anymore. They sat in silence, both lost in their own thoughts. Outside the window, the stars wheeled slowly through space, indifferent to the struggles of the tiny beings who fought and died in their light. Finally, Marcus spoke. What happens if you stop the war? Your generals won't like it. Your people might think you're weak. They might. Some will try to remove me from power. Vexara's voice was steady again. But I am still queen. I still have loyal forces. If I can convince enough of them that peace is possible, and if you can't, then we'll have civil war instead of galactic war. Maybe that's better. At least it would give your people time to rebuild. Marcus studied her face. You're serious about this? I think I am. Vexara picked up the compass and watched its needle point steadily toward Earth. This always pointed home for you. But what if home isn't a place? What if it's a choice? What do you mean? You gave me this so I could find my way home. But maybe home isn't my planet or your planet. Maybe home is the place where we choose to be better than we were. Marcus felt something shift inside his chest. For 3 years he had carried his anger like armor, protecting himself from hope. But sitting here with Vexara, seeing the pain in her eyes, he felt that armor starting to crack. It won't be easy, he said. Your people killed millions of mine. My people will want revenge, not peace. I know, but we have to try. Vexara stood up and walked to the window. I've been thinking about what you said, about building instead of destroying. What if we could build something new? Not human space or Zephyrian space, but something shared? You mean like the dream we talked about on Haven's Rest? Yes, but bigger. A confederation of species working together, using our different strengths to solve problems instead of creating them. Marcus joined her at the window. Out there, scattered across the galaxy, were the survivors of 100 worlds. Humans hiding in asteroid fields, Zephyrians questioning their orders, other species caught between the two forces, hoping for an end to the fighting. It's a beautiful dream, he said, but dreams don't stop wars. Action does. Then let's act. Vexara turned to face him. Help me end this. Not as enemies, but as partners. How? I'm going to address both our peoples. All of them, at the same time. I'm going to tell them the truth about the war, about the lies we've both been told. Her voice grew stronger. But I need you there with me. I need them to see that peace is possible. Marcus stared at her. You want me to stand beside the queen who destroyed my world and tell people to forgive? I want you to stand beside the woman who learned about hope from you and is trying to find it again. The request hung between them like a bridge across an impossible gap. Marcus thought about his dead friends, about the voices in his ship's computer who would never truly come home. He thought about the children of Haven's Rest who would never grow up to explore the stars. But he also thought about the princess who had listened to human music with wonder in her eyes. He thought about the compass that had kept pointing toward home even when home seemed lost forever. If I do this, he said slowly, if I help you make peace, what guarantees do I have? How do I know you won't change your mind again when things get difficult? You don't, Vexara said simply. I can't promise I'll be strong enough to see this through. I can't promise my people will follow me, or that yours will forgive. All I can promise is that I'll try to be the person you thought I could be. Marcus looked at the compass in her hands. Its needle pointed steadily toward Earth, toward a world that no longer existed in the form he remembered. But maybe it was pointing toward something else now. Maybe it was pointing toward possibility. All right, he said. I'll help you. But if you betray this trust, if you go back to war after we start down this path, Then you'll stop me. I know, Vexara smiled sadly. Maybe that's why I need you with me, to remind me who I'm supposed to be. 3 hours later, Queen Vexara stood before the quantum communication array in her ship's command center. The device could broadcast to every Zephyrian ship and every human hideout simultaneously, reaching across light years in an instant. Marcus stood beside her, no longer a prisoner, but not quite a friend either. He had refused to change out of his battle-worn flight suit, wanting both peoples to see him as he really was, a warrior who had chosen to listen instead of fight. "This is Queen Vexara of the Zephyrian Empire," she began, her voice carrying across the galaxy. "I am speaking to all my people and to all humans who can hear this message. What I am about to tell you will not be easy to hear." In asteroid fields and hidden bases, human survivors gathered around their radios. On ships and worlds across the Empire, Zephyrian soldiers stopped what they were doing to listen. 3 years ago, I started this war because I believed it was necessary for our survival. I was told that other species planned to destroy us, that we had no choice but to strike first. I believed these lies because it was easier than facing the truth. Marcus watched her face as she spoke. The mask of royal composure was gone now, replaced by raw honesty. The truth is that I was afraid of responsibility, afraid of making the wrong choice, afraid of being seen as weak. So I chose the path that seemed strong, conquest and control. But strength built on fear is not strength at all. It is just fear wearing armor. On distant worlds, Zephyrian generals began sending urgent messages to their fleets. Some called for the Queen to be removed from power. Others demanded explanations. But many, especially the younger officers, listened with growing understanding. "I have learned something that I should have known from the beginning," Vexara continued. "True strength comes not from the ability to destroy, but from the choice to build. Not from the power to take, but from the wisdom to give." She gestured to Marcus, and he stepped forward. Standing beside me is Marcus Chen, known to many of you as Ghost 7. 3 years ago, he was an engineer on a human colony world. When my ship crashed there, he saved my life, not because he had to, but because he chose to. He showed me what it meant to help someone who could give nothing in return.